Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, hi, my name is Vivian, and in today's video we're gonna do our January wrap up. I am filming this a little bit later, but I hope that's okay with you guys, and also this is also going up a little bit later. I just had a lot of things to do these past few weeks and I was very busy with wedding planning. If you guys do not know, I was in a reading slump in the month of January. Even though I read 10 books, they were in the best. In terms of like statistics, they were in the best. So the first 5 books I read were on my Kindle, and the next 5 books I read were all physical books, and so I did read a lot of Kindle reads this time around. But I do have to tell you guys that all of my Kindle reads, except for one, are not very highly rated. But I was desperately trying to read something, and that was the only thing that was keeping my attention, and so I just went ahead and read it, but I didn't like it. I haven't been in a reading slump in a while, and so this was one of the worst ones I've had, and I couldn't read anything. Let's talk statistics, because I do have my stats written in my journal. Total, as I've mentioned, I read 10 books and I read 5 Kindle and 5 physical books. As for my star ratings, I have a big range of star ratings in this video. I do have a 5-star read. My average star rating for all of the books that I read in this month is 2.93. I'm gonna talk about the books that I read on my Kindle first. The first book I read is actually a fan fiction. It's a Dramini fan fiction called Manacled by Senlin Yu. This book is actually free. You can get it downloaded on AO3, and I did import it to my Kindle, but I did bind the book, so I do have the physical copy, but I do not want to grab it because it's very big and very heavy. Essentially, I read Manacled in the beginning of this year. I started it on the 1st of January and I ended it on the 2nd of January, and the reason why I finished it super quickly was because I actually fell sick. In the beginning of this year, I was traveling and I completely fell sick. I was bedridden in my hotel room for 2 days, and the only thing I did was read because there was nothing else I could do. And so I read Manacled because that was the only book that I felt like picking up, and I gave that book 5 stars. That's the only 5-star book in this month. That book was a complete surprise to me because even though I do love Harry Potter, I'm not like the hugest fan, and I also never really shipped Draco Malfoy with Hermione together, so the thought of them having a fan fiction was a little bit off-putting. But I did pick it up because a lot of people said it was good, and also I do have a little like book club with 3 of my friends and we are reading Manacled, so that's why I did end up picking it up. Even though I do know that's a fan fiction and Harry Potter has already been set in the world building portion, I felt like it was a whole new world outside of Harry Potter, and it was so well done. I loved everything about it. The occlumency portion of the fanfic was amazing. I loved Draco and Hermione's character and their character growth. Harry Potter seemed more like a villain instead of a hero, but it was done so well, and the morally gray Draco Malfoy in this book was amazing. So in Manacled, it's technically divided into 3 sections. It's a present, past, present kind of timeline book, and I absolutely loved the past timeline. It was so freaking good. I ate that up. I just felt like the writing was done so well. The emotions were done really well. I cried a lot reading that book. I really liked how I was second guessing a lot of the morality of all of these characters, and it just made me feel like I wasn't just reading a book, but I was actually feeling the feelings with them, and I could understand why they were so flawed and the things that they did. And I highly recommend it if you guys want to read Manacled. I know a lot of people are scared about the book because some people have said it was very dark, a lot of trigger warnings in the book, but I do personally feel like the author did such a good job going through those trigger warnings. I highly recommend it. Please go and read Manacled. Even if you guys are not a Dramini ship, or if you guys don't really read Harry Potter, I still recommend it because I have a few friends who read Manacled and who don't really love Harry Potter, and they absolutely loved it. So highly recommended. And then I'm gonna talk about these 4 books all together because they're a part of the same series. I read this on my Kindle. I actually found this book because of TikTok, and it's called the Alliance series. It's a dark romance, and there's 4 books. The first book is called Nero, the second book is called Cain, the third book is called Dom, and the 4th book is called Hans. What drew me in was obviously the mafia part because I do love mafia romances, if you guys don't know that. But this whole series was, I think, a little bit too dark for me, or maybe it was too dark for me at that point of time. Someone made a TikTok about this and I just picked it up on a whim, and I just wanted to finish the whole series because there's like this big overarching like plot line. The one I disliked the most was the 3rd book, Dom, and the one I liked the most is Hans, which is the last book. Nero was okay, but I felt like Nero was very deranged. It's a dark romance, you guys, so there's like a lot of stalking involved. You really would not think that it's okay to do it in real life, because if it was you, you'll be calling the police, but because we're in a fictional world. I guess the people there don't really think too much about it. But anyway, I'm gonna quickly talk about each book separately, just like with a few words. Nero, I rated 1.5 stars. Spice level is like a 4.5. It was pretty spicy, and this is the shortest book out of all the 4 books. Nero, I didn't really like. I just felt like his character was a little bit deranged. Him stalking her just felt really creepy, and also the female character in Nero wasn't independent enough for me to like her character. Second book, King, I rated 2.5 stars. Spice was like the highest, I think, for this book, and I like this one more because the main character, Savannah, she had like a fight in her. She stood her ground with King a lot, and she also had her own opinions. But I didn't like it because the spice was a little bit cringy, and in this book there wasn't much plot, so that's why I docked this to 2.5 stars. Dom was more like a Stockholm Syndrome vibe, and I really didn't like that, so it was a 1-star book for me. Spice was like the same as Nero, I think. I actually do book reviews on my reading journal, so I'm kind of like looking at how I felt about the book, and I wrote that I didn't like how this book portrayed King badly because they're interconnected standalone. So in Dom's story, King was in it because the FMC in this book is actually King's stepsister, and also Val felt like a doormat, acted really childish. And the last book, Hans, I rated 3 stars. That's like the highest one out of the 4 books. I think I like this one the most because it's not really very insta-lovey. They both technically knew each other a year ago because they're neighbors, and even though Hans does a little bit of stalking, it doesn't feel like a boundary was crossed because his character throughout the first 3 books was portrayed quite badly. I felt like in this book he redeemed himself, so I really liked this book overall, but it's not the best one because still kind of cringy, and also 80% spice, 20% plot. Overall, this whole series can be titled as a cozy dark romance book, and I would say no expectations going into this book, not a lot of plot with the mafia part of the book. That's for the Kindle books, and now let's get into the physical books that I read in January. The first one I read is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is the first book in the Shepherd King duology. In this book, you follow Elspeth Spindle, who lives in the city of Blunder, and she's one of those rare people who caught the fever and has magic in her. And in her magic, she has a mercurial spirit called the Nightmare living in her mind. But as time goes on, she realizes that the nightmare has been eating up inside her head, and she wants to get rid of this monster. One day she meets some highwaymen, and they end up getting embroiled into this quest to cure the mist in Blunder and to figure out how to get rid of the monster inside Elspeth Spindle's head. This book is so much more than what I just explained to you guys. You guys need to get into this book and understand the magic system, understand the world. I felt like this book was done so well, especially the world building. What I really liked about the magic system is that in a lot of books, when people have magic, that's all they do. They just use the magic freely and comfortably. But in this book, if you have magic in you and you use the magic, you go through degeneration, which basically means that the more you use the magic, the more it eats you up. And I just loved that theory of magic in this book because it makes it so dark, it makes it so creepy, it makes it so rare for you to even use the magic that you own. Even though this was kind of portrayed to be a romance fantasy, I feel like the romance is not that much. I feel like it's more like a fantasy book with hints of romance. The writing was amazing. I loved how beautiful the writing was. The little riddles in here was also really good. So I did have fun with this book, enjoyed it so much. This was a 4.25 read. And also, if you guys liked a little bit of a closed door fantasy book, this was pretty good. I think there's like a little bit of spice, I would say, but it's not too bad, and it really isn't that descriptive. So I do highly recommend this duology. The second book I read is When in Rome by Sarah Adams, and I know I'm late to the game. This book was really popular, I think, last year. It got a little bit of hype, but I had a hard time finding this book when it was hyped. I only finally got it, and I only finally picked it up. So in this book, you follow Amelia, who is actually a celebrity, but she is burnt out from being a celebrity. So she escapes to a town called Rome in Kentucky, not Rome, Italy, and she ends up meeting a baker who she ends up getting involved in romantically, and you basically follow her life in this small town, and you find her falling in love with a small town, falling in love with this baker, and not wanting to go back to her celebrity life. So I did have fun with When in Rome, and I really liked the story. I loved both Amelia and Noah's characters. I really liked how, even though this was a little bit of grumpy sunshine, the grumpy is not super grumpy, and the sunshine is not super sunshine. Does it make any sense? I just really like how Noah is a gentleman through and through, regardless of him being grumpy or not, and he's very respectful to women. And Amelia, on the other hand, she got to know him slowly, and this was a little bit of a slow burn. I just really liked how everything was portrayed in this book. Characters were really good. I loved the side characters too. I really liked the storyline. It was really easy to read, and yeah, I had fun with this book. Also another closed door romance book. I rated this 4.5. My feelings reading this was just really good, and I think I teared up a little bit reading this book, so I did have fun. And then I read Practice Makes Perfect, which is actually the companion novel following When in Rome, and this book I rated 1.5. This book was just I don't even know how to explain this book. You follow Annie in this book, and Annie is the youngest sister of the Walker family. Noah is the eldest brother, and Annie is the youngest sister in the Walker family. And the MMC is the bodyguard of Amelia, so that's how they're connected. Annie gets Will's help in terms of dating because Annie really wants to get married, have kids, all of that, but she's never really dated very much, and so she gets Will to help her on how to date. The reason why I didn't like this book was at first, Annie's character in here made her feel like she's only 21 or even 18, but she's actually a grown woman. She's like in her late 20s, but I just don't feel like late 20s people act like her. Also, suddenly I lost sunlight because it's about to freaking rain, so we're only relying on my ring light right now. But yeah, about Practice Makes Perfect, the characters were very unlikable. I really didn't like Annie. She felt very pick-me. Will was very indecisive. It was also very repetitive in a sense where Will's traumatic childhood was constantly talked about, but I felt like there was no need to keep talking about it because we all know what he went through. The flow of them getting together just didn't feel as good as like When in Rome, and so overall I rated this 1.5. I didn't have fun with this book at all. I didn't like what happened in the book, and so plot-wise, not so good. Characters, unlikable, so 1.5. I read another rom-com book, and it's You with a View by Jessica Joyce, and this book I also rated not very high. This book was a 2-star read, and this book, when I first started it, felt like a 4-star read, which is really a bummer because once again, didn't know that I was not going to enjoy this book that much. And if you guys don't know, in this book, the FMC recently lost her grandmother, and she found this box of her grandma's stuff, and inside the box there's like a secret letter from her secret lover when she was young. Noelle goes on this journey to figure out who her grandma's secret lover is, and it turns out to be her high school nemesis grandfather, and they end up going on a road trip to their supposed elopement trip. Noelle just really wants to get to know her grandmother a little bit more, and in this book it's mostly about the road trip, and I really liked that portion of the book. But then when you get into like the 60% mark and they actually come back home and things start happening, that's when I really didn't like it. There was a third act conflict in here that really docked down the points of this book because I really didn't like third act conflicts, and this book's third act conflict was not done well. Overall, I just didn't feel like the conflict was justifiable. It was not needed at all. Chemistry felt off by the end of this. The relationship was just based on lots of lies and lots of secrets, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it by the end of this, so I rated this a 2-star. This also has spice in it, and I felt like the spice was very, very cringy. Thankfully, however, the last book I read in this month was actually a good book. Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I love this book. I truly, truly loved and had fun with this book. I mentioned before a few times actually that I was not one of those people who loved Divine Rivals. I felt like it was not enough fantasy. But this book, as I have guessed, this book had a lot more fantasy elements than the first book, which I can understand now that I'm thinking about it. But the romance in here was just so much more superior too. Because in this book, you already get the emotional attachment of Iris and Roman, but then in this book, they're like star-crossed lovers. So you feel more emotions, you feel more pain between them, and you just really want them to be together. And that's why I absolutely love this one, because the romance in here is unbreakable, honestly, unbeatable. A lot of the scenes in here are amazing. The prose is beautiful. Some of the quotes in here are crazy, like honestly crazy. I just loved this book so much because of that. This book was the one that got me out of a reading slump, so I have to thank Ruthless Vows for this. I did rate this only 4.5 because by the end of this, there's like this really big climactic portion that didn't really feel that gripping and interesting, and that's why I'm rating this a 4.5, because if that part of the book could get me those emotions that I really want, this would be a 5-star, but because it was kind of anticlimactic, 4.5. But overall, still really, really good. Still really loved it. It is now raining, which is Wow. Okay, so yeah, that's the end of my January wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video and hearing me talk about these books. I promise February is a better month because I'm already starting off strong. Super excited for my February reads. My TBR is also really freaking amazing. So I'm very excited for this month and hopefully you guys are too. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.